Hello everybody, welcome back to another video with Lim Reviews. So if you've been following me on YouTube, recently I've been doing a lot of comparisons between the Amazfit watches, namely the GTS, GTR, and right now the BIP. So in this video, I actually want to show you guys the differences between the GTS that I have on my left right here with the BIP. So I know a lot of you guys have been using the BIP, and it is one of the more famous or popular smartwatches that a lot of people have bought it. And I just wanted to show you what you will be getting if you do decide to upgrade to the GTS. We all know that the Amazfit BIP is really known for the battery life, the super long battery life. I mean, it's just a very good smartwatch for the price. It's not very expensive. So let's just do a quick comparison between both these smartwatches and maybe let you consider whether it is time for you to upgrade your Amazfit BIP to something like the Amazfit GTS. So bear in mind that this video has not been sponsored by Amazfit in any way. These are just smartwatches that I've been using personally, and I just wanted to share my personal experience with you so that you can figure out whether or not you want to upgrade. So first up, let's talk about the price differences between both these smartwatches. So obviously the GTS comes in at a more expensive price here in China for about 125 US dollars, and the Amazfit BIP, I got it here in China for 50 US dollars. So please note that in China, these watches are actually really cheap, but in the US or maybe somewhere else in the world, expect a $30 to $50 markup in prices between both these watches. Next, I want to talk a bit about the design right here. So as you can see, both these smartwatches have very similar in a way, but also different designs. So on the GTS, of course, we have a really nice design right here. As you have already seen in my previous videos, these materials are all very premium quality, and it feels really good. It's actually very light, very similar in weight to the Amazfit BIP. But on the Amazfit BIP, you have some very solid plastics going on here as well. I've actually dropped my Amazfit BIP a couple of times, and just look at how the way it turns out. It still looks really new right here. So both these have displays with a Corning Gorilla Glass 3, and they're pretty scratch resistant. But in terms of the design and the build quality, I would say that these are both top notch. Design wise, this really depends on your personal preference, but of course the GTS looks a bit nicer since it's a later design. But the BIP is no ugly thing as well. So I actually changed the straps on the Amazfit BIP to have this panda kind of colorway. This is just my personal preference. Of course, both these watches use the 20mm bands, and you can just switch them up really easily. They actually have these little latches at the back here, which I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. So both these uses the same kind of bands, and yeah, they're really interchangeable super easily. Next, I want to talk a bit about the display. Of course, this is where the biggest difference is. On the GTS, we have a wonderful 1.65-inch AMOLED display with 341 ppi, so that is actually really clear. I've been using the GTS for almost 2 weeks now actually, and I love this display. It is really amazing, and it is really bright. It gets so bright outdoors that seriously you will not have any issues looking at the time outdoors at all. So on the BIP, on the other hand, we also have this pretty decent display. It is a 1.28-inch always on color reflective display. So what that means is that although you see that there's a bit of color here, and if you tilt it to the side, you notice that we have this red and blues all going on the screen. It really depends on the watch face you choose, but the good thing here is that it has this always on display. So you'll always be able to see the time and all the information that is on your screen. So the difference between both these is that on the left, on the GTS, you get an amazing screen, one that is super sensitive to react to your lifts or your raise in your hands or whatever. But on the BIP, we actually have this always on display, and that really helps out a lot. So I wouldn't say that the always on display is the clearest or the most visible under sunlight, because it does get a bit dim sometimes, but I still find this very useful and helpful. The fact that we have an always on display on the watch is something that I really love. Next, I want to talk a bit about the UI smoothness on both these watches. So obviously, like the GTS comes with better hardware and specifications. So we're getting a very smooth UI over here, and I have had no issues or no serious lags actually on this UI. Everything still feels really smooth. However, I can't really say the same for the Amazfit BIP. So if you have used this, I'm sure that once or twice you may get a bit of a headache trying to navigate through it. So let me just try and navigate here and show you guys the menus. So it actually works pretty well sometimes, but at other times it might be pretty laggy. So right now it is functioning quite well, as you can see here. It still looks pretty smooth, but sometimes when I unlock the Amazfit BIP, it does get a bit laggy. So just to let you know, the UI smoothness is not the smoothest on the BIP, but that is to be expected because this watch is already like a year old. So smoothness wise, of course, the GTS will beat the BIP hands down. Meanwhile, both in terms of what kind of activities these watches track, so the GTS tracks quite a lot of activities. If we just go into there, we can see that we have a lot of activities that it tracks. There are actually 12 activities here, ranging from running, outdoor cycling, swimming, and all that. So the Amazfit BIP actually covers just the very few basic activities, such as running and cycling. It doesn't really track your swimming activities. So in terms of activities, the GTS tracks way more activities compared to the BIP right here. In terms of tracking accuracy, I would say that both these are actually more or less the same. These days, almost every smartwatch can track your steps pretty accurately. Both these can also track your heart rate and sleep accurately as well. But one thing that both these watches have in common, a common issue, is that the GPS on both these watches are really poor. So if you've seen my previous videos, you know that I always complain about the GPS on the Amazfit watches. And the situation is still the same here on both the GTS and the BIP. The GTS on both these watches are still pretty bad. It always gets super difficult to lock on to the GPS and to even get a location tracked for your activities that you're currently running. So there has been no improvement in the GPS in my opinion. I still find the same issues on the Amazfit GTS. So if GPS is something that you really must have, just know that both these watches are not great at locking onto GPS. Moving on, in terms of the ability to store songs or answer calls, both these watches do not have a mic on board, so you're not able to play songs or answer calls. Meanwhile, in terms of battery life, this is another part where the BIP actually excels, because it gets about 30 days of battery life under normal use, whereas on the GTS it is 2 weeks. So in my opinion, based on after using these two watches, I find that charging the watch up after 2 weeks is perfectly fine. And yeah, I simply love the GTS for that. It's just 2 weeks and it's no big deal. So even though you get like 30 days on the Amazfit BIP, which to be honest is really amazing, sometimes you even forget to charge it up. But yeah, both these watches have great battery lives. Last but not least, another thing that these two watches have in that is different is that the Bluetooth on the GTS is BLE 5.0, whereas on the BIP it is 4.0. So connecting, so far I actually haven't found any issues with connectivity, but I noticed that the data on the Amazfit BIP was just a bit slower to load and synchronize with the app on the phone, but no big deal. Both these watches are able to sync with your Bluetooth on your mobile phone, on your smartphone actually, very well. So at the end of the day, both these watches are actually great smartwatches. What I want to say is that if you, depending on your budget, if it's just like 50 to 60 bucks, you can actually still consider getting the BIP today. It is still a great smartwatch, even though it is 1 year old. But if you have that bit more money to spend on your smartwatch, I would highly recommend you to get the Amazfit GTS, not just because it has this amazing display, but the battery life is also 2 weeks long, which is great in my opinion, and it tracks a lot more activities. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. If you found this video helpful or useful in any way, please don't forget to hit that like button below, as it helps me out a lot. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!